The West isn't a place, it isn't a compass direction, it's a euphemism. It's a polite way of referring to the civilizations which were founded by and for European people. The West comprises Europe, especially Western Europe, and the former colonial possessions which have a substantial or culturally dominant white European population. In previous centuries there was another euphemism for our people's heritage and our civilization: Christendom. But today, not only are the majority of people in the world not of European ancestry, so are the majority of Christians, and Christianity and the various churches are not in any way at the forefront of promoting knowledge, spreading civilization or technology, or promoting the well-being of European people. More than that, Christianity seems to be on the side of those who want to see white communities replaced. Yes, replaced. They see homogeneous white communities as something horrible, something to be ashamed of, and something which should be replaced by a mishmash of races and diverse cultures. We, as white people, as people of European ancestry, culture and heritage, need to put our own interests into view. I won't go as far as saying that white well-being has to be our number one priority at all times and should trump all other concerns, but can we at the very least mention the fact that we'd actually prefer not to be erased from history and be replaced by people who are being taught that we are evil and whiteness is a disease? Is that too much to ask for, really? Australians celebrate the arrival of the First Fleet to found the colony at Botany Bay and effectively begin modern Australian history in January 1788. But not all Australians do that. To the Aborigines, these events are somewhat bittersweet, to put it mildly. Before the white people arrived, they owned their whole world. They had no outsiders stealing their land and nobody telling them that they were savages, poor, ignorant, and lacking moral worth. It is a similar story in North America. These days, liberals wouldn't dream of trying to get native people to celebrate the history of the conquest of their land and the replacement of their people in that land. But white people are expected to celebrate non-white heroes and to be interested in the culture of the people who are replacing them in their own lands or the lands that they have made their own. Americans are now being told that their history didn't begin with Columbus or the Pilgrim Fathers, but when the first slaves arrived in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. And give it no more than 5 years before children in Britain will be taught that the most significant date in British history was the arrival of the former troop ship, the Empire Windrush, with a few hundred black people from the Caribbean. And that therefore June 1948 truly marks the start of modern Britain, which beforehand was a cultural wasteland dying of a lack of diversity. They will no doubt also be told that Britain invited these migrants in and continued to invite in migrants for decades, often with promises of the British dream, which turned out to be a letdown for the poor, deluded and mistreated migrants. This is nonsense. The Empire Windrush took on Jamaicans and took them to Tilbury because they had space to fill and people were the only cargo the ship could take. They charged them £28 a head and they had queues of takers. This is just free enterprise. It was no more government policy or an expression of the will of the people than other morally dubious business ventures such as expensive loans to the poor, gambling or selling cigarettes. Just because something is not illegal, it doesn't follow that the people endorse it. Some people made money from transporting immigrants. Other people made money from employing immigrants at low wages. The mass of the British people were not consulted, and they did not consent. Whenever British people of any social class expressed the idea that they didn't want to live with or work with foreigners with different habits and unfamiliar appearance, they were told to shut up, budge up, and pay up. There's no room for racialism in modern Britain. Why? Why must white people be the only people to put the interests of those who are replacing them ahead of their own interests? What is in it for us? Nothing. Can you imagine an Australian Aborigine being told that he had to celebrate the arrival of the people who replaced his people and that he must not dare to suggest that life might have been better for his people if his native land had not been usurped by uninvited aliens? But the Aboriginal people of Britain, Germany, France, Sweden, Ireland and the rest of Europe are being told that they have to not only accept replacement, but they should be seen to celebrate it, or they are morally deficient. No, there is nothing wrong with knowing who you are and being against the replacement of your people and the denigration of your culture. It is not a moral weakness, it is a moral imperative.